Hello everyone, welcome back to Metastic Days. Today we're going to talk about the chemistry SAT subject test, and we're going to talk all details like what types of questions are on there, how you can prepare, and most of all, how you can get a really good score on it, like an 800. So let's get started. So let's take a little bit of an introduction on the chemistry SAT subject test. So there are two types of questions on there: multiple choice and relationship analysis questions. The multiple choice have 5 choices, so you have A to E, there is negative marking on this test, so you're gonna get 1 out of 4 points for getting a question wrong. So you're gonna get those points removed. So if you do get a question wrong, you're actually going to be getting negative 1.25 marks. Because first of all, you answered it, so it's the question has 1 mark, it has the worth of 1 mark, and then you answered it wrong, so that's another negative 0.25. So you're gonna get negative 1.25 for getting a question wrong. So let's say you have 4 questions, you guessed 2 of them, and they're both wrong, but the other 2 are right. You're gonna get 1.5 out of 4 marks, because 2.5 marks will go because you guessed and you did those 2 questions. So it's better to leave questions empty than to do them or guess them. So it prevents you from guessing. Don't guess, only 20% chance of getting it right, okay? So basic idea of the test. So essentially you have a point scale from 200 to 800. You have 60 minutes and 85 multiple choice questions. In those, I think it's around 15 or like 20 relationship analysis questions, and the rest are all standard multiple choice. So you're not allowed to use a calculator. The problem solving requires simple kind of numerical calculation, so you're not going to need a calculator, but ideally you want to have some mental math skills. Measurements are in metric system, and you'll be getting a periodic table, a very simple periodic table. You're not going to get any electronegativities on there or even the molar masses. You're just going to get atomic number and the elements. That's it. So relationship analysis questions. So on the actual chemistry test, relationship analysis questions must be answered on the special section labeled chemistry at the lower left hand corner of your answer sheet. These questions will be numbered beginning with 101. Note that CE in this section indicates a correct explanation of the relationship, and I'll explain to you what CE really is used for in these relationship analysis questions. So I have an example of a relationship analysis question. So we have 101. This is the first question. Carbon is a non-metal. That is a true fact, right? Carbon is a non-metal. Now we go over here and we look and we see carbon atoms can bond with each other. That is also true. We have methane where carbon atoms are, not methane, we have more of like propane and those type of compounds where carbon atoms are bonding with each other. And we also know carbon is a non-metal because it's on the very right side of the periodic table. Now, is it because that carbon is a non-metal that carbon atoms can bond with each other? No. So first you would write, okay, statement 1 is true, statement 2 is true. Now, is statement 1 true because of statement 2? Not exactly, right? So it's not true because it's not true that carbon is a non-metal that carbon atoms can bond with each other. Any atoms can bond with each other. So really it's not that carbon is a non-metal, that's why it can bond with other carbon atoms. So that's where you would put CE if there was statement 1 and there was statement 2 and statement 1 was true because of statement 2, then you would put CE also in your answer. So you'd be bubbling in true, true, and then CE. Now let's talk about multiple choice. But before I go on to that, I forgot to mention. Okay, so you can have if you have 2 true statements, statement 1 and 2 is true, you can have a CE or you cannot have a CE. Like you have the option of having a CE and not having a CE. But let's say one of the statements is false. Then you cannot have a correct explanation, because if statement 1 is false, then it can't be true because of statement 2, right? So when any of these statements are false, remember that CE is not applicable. So CE is only applicable when both of the statements are true. Just wanted to put that out there. So there's 3 types of multiple choice questions: ones that are easy and memory based, ones that are medium and numerical, usually fact based, and ones that are lab based. So you're gonna have part A, part B, part C. Okay, and I'll show you how those questions look. I believe part B is one of the biggest parts because they're just very like medium level questions. So here are questions 5 to 9. Now these are questions 5 to 9. This is not one question. You're gonna get a mark for each question. So the way the SAT subject tests work, they go from easy to hard. So you're gonna start with these questions and you're gonna get questions like this. This is the first thing you're probably gonna see on your SAT chemistry subject test. So you're basically gonna have a bunch of options and essentially like definitions or like almost like properties or statements about different concepts, and you're gonna have to really know which one is for which. So what is always amphoteric in nature? That is proteins. Proteins are always amphoteric in nature, found as both straight changed and branched polymers. That would be carbohydrates. So they're found straight chain and in branched polymers. Deoxyribose in DNA nucleotides belongs to this family of biologically important molecules. Deoxyribose is basically sugar, so that would be carbohydrates, C. Always ionic in nature. That would be electrolyte. They're always ionic in nature. Tend not to be water soluble and aggregate into droplets of molecular bilayers. That is obviously lipids. Fats do that. They're not water soluble. So here are all the answers. I put these in little red markings, so if you want to do the questions, you can do them yourself too. But essentially, this is the type of thing you're gonna get. That's why it's important to memorize a lot of information and a lot of definitions, because you're gonna have to know the properties of different terms in chemistry. So, which of the following molecule has the strongest carbon-to-carbon bond? You have A, C2H2, B, C2H4, C, C2H6, D, C3H8, and E, C4H10. The answer obviously is C2H2 because it has less hydrogens and the carbon have a stronger bond. I don't really want to go too much into the chemistry, but I just want to give you an example of a question that you could see on the chemistry subject test. So this is more of a lab question. Now this is where we get to part C, and these are usually the toughest questions. The following concentration data were gathered for the above reaction at 5-minute intervals from the start of an experiment. If the experiment was carried out in a closed system at constant temperature, then during which time interval from the start of the experiment did the reaction most likely achieve equilibrium? So equilibrium is when the rate of the forward reaction equals the rate of the reverse reaction. So they're both at the same rate. So we're gonna have this equal this, right? So you have this reaction right here, and you have a timetable. So you have 0 minute, 5 minute, 10 minute, 15 minute, 20 minute, and 25 minute. And then you have these changes in molar concentration, right? So when would equilibrium be achieved? Equilibrium would be achieved at 15 to 20 minutes, which is D. And the reason is because after 20 minutes, the actual molecular concentration stays the same. Now, when it has stabilized, that means equilibrium has been reached. So that's why the answer for this question is D. Now, prep books. Let's talk about prep books. We have Princeton Review, McGraw-Hill, and Barron's. So these are the 3 books I kind of went through. If we're talking about like company books. So I found Princeton Review to be at the top because it is very in-depth, it's very conversational, and they have drills at the end of each section. And the other thing with Princeton is they have a lot of details. They're very good at explaining difficult concepts, and I find that to be super helpful because there's some things on the SAT subject test that are not a part of the curriculum, and you can easily find them in these prep books and basically learn them on your own. So that's why I found Princeton Review to be at the top. And they also have very, very, very good practice tests that are very close to the actual official test. So that's why I find Princeton to be the most helpful. And then McGraw-Hill is easier than Princeton. And McGraw-Hill, essentially, this book, the reason why I used it was it was very short and it could explain concepts in very like summary based, I guess, format. Like the concept explanations were not as long as Princeton. If you see the Princeton book, it's very thick, but if you see McGraw-Hill, it's not as thick. So it was just really quick, nice summaries that I could get. And I started with this book because the questions were easier, so I think I got a little bit of confidence starting with this book. Now, Barron's is the hardest, and personally, I don't find Barron's to be as helpful. But I know a lot of people vouch for this book, so if it's something that helps you, definitely use it. Now, you definitely, and you have no choice, you definitely need to have the College Board SAT Chemistry Subject Test Prep Book. This is what it looks like. You're gonna need this because it actually has official SAT subject tests from the past that were given to students. So you're gonna have 2 SAT subject tests, and ideally, you wanna be doing these tests 1 week before the exam or 2 weeks before the exam at max. And this will essentially test your knowledge right before the exam and how good you're at basically doing the subject tests. So this is a must-have. And it will give you a very good idea of the questions, plus, they give very detailed explanations for why the answer is as such. So if the answer is D and you don't understand, you answered A, you're going to find out and they're going to give an explanation, and that's helpful too. And all these other books do the same. So let's look at online resources you can use. You can use cracksat.net, which has a bunch of online quick tests with SAT, basically SAT subject test type questions, and they're taken from books, they're taken from multiple resources. So this is great if you want to go like topic based, and they even have full ones. But if you're like going specifically topic based and you're weak at certain topics, do the test for those topics. And then for YouTube, we have the Organic Chemistry Tutor. This guy has a bunch of videos, a bunch of helpful videos on different concepts and actually answering SAT questions. Now, this channel right here, Olympiad EDU, they used to have a bunch of helpful videos on SAT subject tests, but I think the channel removed all those videos, so I don't think you can use this one anymore. But this was also helpful to me because they had a lot of cool tricks you could use on the SAT. Now, let's talk about the topic breakdown, and for this, I'm actually going to go on the College Board website. How about that? Let's go. College Board, yay. Okay, so we're essentially looking at topic breakdown. Structure of matter, 25%. States of matter, 16%. Reaction types, 14%. Stoichiometry, 14%. Equilibrium and reaction rates, 5%. Thermochem, 6%. Descriptive chemistry, 12%. Laboratory, 8%. Does this even matter? Well, this gives you an idea of what content is really on the test. So ideally, you want to really know your structure of matter really well because it's 25% of the test, let's face it, right? So this gives you a really good idea of what topics you should really be focusing on and know like the back of your hand, right? So we're going to go under the subject test and we're going to really look at the details of each of these topic breakdowns. So let's see where we have the tests. SAT subject tests. I don't know. Wait, let me just check the subjects they have. Wait. Okay, so I'm gonna go under chemistry. I want to go right down here. Got really good information on their website. So in structure of matter, you have atomic structure. You're going to have to know quantum numbers, energy levels, electron configuration, periodic trends like electronegativity, all that stuff. You're going to need to know Lewis structures and also VSEPR. You're going to need to know ionic, covalent, and metallic bonds, their properties, intermolecular forces, hydrogen bonding, dipole-dipole, dispersion, London forces, all of that. Okay, that's structure of matter. States of matter, you're going to have to know kinetic molecular theory, gas law relationship. You're also going to have to know density, and you're going to have to know the stoichiometry. So you're going to have those P1V1 equals P2V2 formulas and like stoichiometry along with that. So you're going to have to know your gas laws and all that stuff too. You're going to need to know molar volumes. You're going to need to know intermolecular forces in liquids and solids, types of solids, phase changes, and phase diagrams. So those are very simple concepts that you kind of learn in grade 9, but they also test you on those sometimes too. You're going to need to know molarity, percent by mass concentration, solution preparation, and stoichiometry. Solubility, you're gonna actually have to memorize the solubility chart. Liquids, gases, and qualitative aspects of colligative properties. So colligative properties, make sure to also know that. You're gonna need to know Bronsted-Lowry theory. You're gonna know acids and bases. You're gonna have to know strong and weak acids, pH, titrations, indicators. You're gonna have to know all of that stuff too. Oxidation reduction. You're gonna need to know oxidation reduction, combustion, oxidation numbers, activity series. So you're gonna have to know the activity series, and you're gonna have to memorize that. Okay. Precipitation. You're gonna need to memorize basic solubility rules, like I mentioned before. Stoichiometry. You're gonna have to know the molar mass, Avogadro's number, empirical and molecular formulas. So as I told you before, they'll give you a periodic table and it won't actually have molar masses on there, because sometimes molar masses vary from periodic table to periodic table. So when they're asking you to do simple stoichiometry on your exam, they're actually going to give you the molar mass in the question. So you gotta know that. And with molar mass, I know it's very specific, like carbon is 12.01. You want to try to like be very practical with it, since you're not gonna have a calculator, so just treat it as 12, you know, and be able to round your numbers and really have good mental math skills, because you're gonna need those. Chemical equations, you're gonna need to know how to balance equations, simple stuff. Stoichiometry calculation, percent yield, limiting reactants, make sure to know this. There is always a question on limiting reactants. So for equilibrium, as you can see, it's very little. You're not gonna have to know too much about equilibrium, but it's basically Chatelier's principle, equilibrium constants, expression, rates of reaction. So you're gonna need to know potential energy diagrams and activation energies. So thermochem, you're gonna need to know conservation of energy, calorimetry. This actually comes into, and specific heat enthalpy, blah 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 blah. You're gonna have to know all of that stuff, heating and cooling curves. Like I said, activation energies, those diagrams with exothermic, endothermic. Descriptive chemistry, you're gonna have to know common elements, nomenclature, periodic trends. This is like grade 9, grade 10 stuff. So you're gonna have to know the basics as well as all of this grade 12 stuff too. So simple organic compounds and compounds of environmental concern. So you're gonna have to know basic, you're gonna have to have a basic idea of like common elements, common compounds like methane, and kind of know a little bit about its properties. So this is stuff you'll find in the prep book, because they'll tell you exactly what descriptive chemistry you need to know. Now, this is part C. They actually give a different section for it. 8% of the test is laboratory. You're gonna have to know several experiments, and there's very specific experiments they ask about. But the other thing you need to know is laboratory equipment, measurements, procedures, observations. There's, I think, question about precision and accuracy, like they ask. I don't know, it's in the book, I don't quite remember, but there's a certain terms you need to know, and just in general data analysis, and they'll give you some experiments that commonly come up on the SAT chemistry subject test. So that's a really detailed topic breakdown, so you have an idea what you're really going to be seeing. You're going to be seeing literally grade 9 to 12 chemistry. Nothing is left out. So study tips to getting an 800. Use your prep books efficiently. And I really want to emphasize this, because prep books are like your fairy godmother in this whole journey to getting your SATs. So you're gonna have to really use your prep books efficiently, and use the prep books that actually help you understand topics. Now, you don't want to relearn everything, right? If there's something you know, then don't go back to that topic and read it over again. Just skim over it, get a little bit of an idea of it if you've forgotten something, and that's it. The topics you struggle with, write them down, write a list, and go through them daily. Make a schedule. You're gonna have to plan for this, because it's all self-taught. Unless you have a tutor, you're probably going to have to really have a lot of self-discipline to go through everything, right? So you're gonna have to make a plan, a schedule for when you're gonna get what done and which topics you're going to cover, because before you even start attempting the practice test, you need to know the concepts. And I know a lot of people will like recommend you to like start a practice test. Every prep book starts with like a practice test basically, and they'll just give you an idea of where you are, but I don't suggest doing those if you don't know the topics. Like if you haven't been in the American curriculum, you know that the difference in curriculum may cause some problems, so always be like, I guess, aware of that curricular challenge So make sure to read through your concepts effectively and use your prep books. Now, practice tests, you're gonna have to start them at least 3 weeks prior to the SAT, and you're gonna have to do as many as possible. Maybe you won't use the prep book for McGraw-Hill, but just do the practice tests on there. Ultimately, you want to try to get as many practice questions as possible because this is a standardized test. So basically, everything is standardized. There's certain types of questions they ask, and if you can just memorize those, study, understand that, then you'll be able to do really good on the test because you'll know what to expect, right? SAT subject tests are probably the most predictable tests. They literally copy paste some exact questions and they'll just tweak a number in it. I've literally seen exact questions on the chemistry subject test. So make sure to practice like there's no tomorrow. You're gonna have to do so many practice tests before you actually get those marks. And when you're doing those practice tests, make sure to time yourself. Make sure to treat it like a real SAT so you get a really good idea, a very practical and real idea of how you're doing on these practice tests. Make flashcards with concepts you don't know and questions you get wrong. Look over them every day until the day of the test. So you're going to make a bunch of flashcards with terms you don't know, with concepts you struggle with questions you struggle with, and you just write those down and you look over them every day until the day of the test, and you try your best to understand all of those questions. I don't just want you to memorize them. Try to understand what you did wrong in those questions. I don't want you reading over the solutions in the book because it's very easy to do that, but really write down what you did wrong and how you can correct that, right? So make flashcards for important concepts and things that are not sitting in your head. Know your formulas and be able to manipulate them. So you have P1 V1 over T1 equals P2 V2 divided by T2. You're gonna have to know, like, if you're finding temperature 1, you're gonna have to know how to manipulate your formula to get to that, right? So be really good with your formulas, even as simple as the grams per mole formula or solving for grams per mole or the mole or whatever. Just be good with your formulas. You need to know them at the back of your hand and you need to be able to manipulate them. So if you have T1, P1, V1, and you have P2 and T2, you're gonna need to know how to find V2. Okay, so you're gonna have to manipulate your formulas. This is something that you kind of practice more in physics, but it's very helpful in chemistry. Lastly, memorize facts. There is so much out there on the chemistry subject test, especially the part 1, the easiest part that you should be getting all the questions right on. Flame test colors, solubility rules, intermolecular forces, etc. There's certain things you need to memorize. There's nothing else you can do about them. You're gonna have to know your flame test colors, and please look at your prep books because sometimes flame test colors can vary a little bit in different curriculums and in different books. Like, I've noticed that in my own experience because I did the chemistry here in Alberta, and I found like the colors weren't as exact as they were in the prep books. Like, there was just a teeny weeny bit difference, right? It was like dark red and like red, that type of difference. So make sure to look at your prep books because they'll have flame test colors, solubility rules, and everything. And you just have to memorize the solubility chart. It's taught in grade 11 chemistry in Alberta, but I don't know quite about America and whatnot. And I basically just looked up on YouTube and cool memory trick to just memorize that and memorize flame test colors because I couldn't remember them. So I just look at cool memory tricks because it's easier and it's much more fun and engaging. So that's what I did to really learn all of that. So that's it for the chemistry SAT subject test. Now, if you have any questions, DM me, text me, email me, do whatever you like, whatever is much more comfortable for you. Follow me on Instagram. Make sure to read my blog post because I update a lot of cool information on there and really great SAT subject test tips, and what helped me and what can help you. And it's really about figuring out what study style works for you, but this is a standardized test, so just do as many questions as you can. There's no other way out of it. But if you need any help, you can DM me anytime. And also subscribe to my guys, I can't speak today. This is ridiculous. So subscribe to my YouTube channel, share, comment, like, do whatever you want. Press the bell notification button thing. I've been really bad at intros and outros, so forgive me. I haven't been very experienced with this type of stuff, but I'll try to put out more content every day. And also follow me on Instagram. I have really cool things up on Instagram too. So that's it for the whole